right now. Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
Good evening, everyone. Bob Pompeani here, manning the fan cave as I do every night at 412-575-2600. That's the number to call. We have a lot to get into, a very busy week, and it started with a doubleheader of sorts, Pucks and Bucks. Today we'll get into that. Andrew Filipponi is joining me up at 93.7 The Fan. PM team, I'm sure, busy today. And Pony, let's start with the Penguins because I thought they played a pretty solid road game. First period especially came out, took the play to the Maple Leafs. Eventually they get to overtime where their weakness seems to continue to be exploited here. They're just not very good in it. They couldn't gain possession of the puck. Toronto basically wore them down in their attack zone, and they got the game-winning goal by Jake McCabe. But they get a point, and it's a big point. Your thoughts about this game tonight?
Well, it was not a total eclipse of the heart for them, Bob. You know, that would have been a loss in regulation that would have probably doomed them. The point, I believe, keeps them alive. I probably would have signed up for a point before the game.
And they just didn't do it tonight. So tomorrow it's interesting now. You got Detroit and Washington, and I wonder what people out there would think about that game and who they'd want to win. The worst case scenario to me is that they tie, go to overtime, so one team gets another point, and then the other team gets 2 points.
Yeah, I think you want Washington to win just because I don't trust them. You know, they've not really, other than goaltending and stingy defense, they don't score a lot of goals, which is weird because they've got Alex Ovechkin nearing 30 goals again. Their lack of scoring has shown up. You get them behind in games, they can't come back, like the game against the Penguins on Thursday of last week. Bob, I got to ask you, who do you play in net Thursday? Who are you going with against Detroit? You going to let them play 10 in a row?
Yeah, I am, because they have 2 days off.
Let's go.
And he's a former Detroit
Let's go,
Red
Bob.
Wing.
You're on the Ned train.
You're
all about
Ned.
Ned.
He still played well enough
You've
to me.
abandoned
Jari.
Takes. That's what I want to hear.
I haven't abandoned anyone. I'm just saying I'd ride the hot goaltender. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
I do think at some point Jari's going to play again. And knowing Mike Sullivan, though, he may, this is a loss. Yeah, it was an overtime loss, and the goalie played well. But I wouldn't be surprised if he goes to Jari that night. I still think it's going to be Nedeljkovic, though.
Well, I would be surprised because it really is a playoff game. If you lose at home to Detroit, even if it's an overtime loss or a shootout loss, I don't think there's a real viable way for you to get in with how many teams are competing for those last 2 spots, with how congested it is, with the remaining schedule with Boston and still a trip to New York looming. I think you've got to get 2 in regulation against Detroit, and Ned gives you the best chance to do that. Bob, just to clear up something that people were wondering about, where was Sidney Crosby in that overtime? Mike Sullivan said after the game, skate issue. What was going on with his skates in this game? He needed a change of skates in the third period at one point, which delayed him getting out there for a power play opportunity. And then he didn't see the ice in overtime to start because of a skating malfunction. We got to have a conversation about skates. Conversation about visas. We couldn't get Ryan Shea there in time, barely got him in time, and now skates kept Sidney Crosby off the ice in that 3-on-3 session.
Yeah, I mean, I found it surprising because when he got that collision with McCabe, I thought it was his knee. He went to the bench and he looked like he changed skates, and so you would have thought that would have been resolved. And then all of a sudden, if that's the issue, I was surprised to hear that. I didn't know he said that after the game. So, hey, bottom line is they get a point. They're tied with Detroit. They do have the tiebreakers on everyone, which is regulation win. So they just got to figure out a way to keep grinding along. We'll talk about it with you at 412-575-2600. Also a big night for the Pirates. We'll get into the Bucks and what they did tonight. Anything else, fair game. Call us right here on KDKA Plus and 93.7 The Fan. It's the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. All right, welcome back. It's our GMC Sierra tweet of the night, and this comes from MLB, and it's Ryan Reynolds with his 100th home run. Yeah, the Pirates won another game. It's the first time since 1992 that they've started a season now 9-2, and they beat Detroit tonight over at PNC Park. And the good news, I thought, one of them anyway, was Mitch Keller. It was his 3rd outing of the year. Last year he was 7-3 at PNC Park, pitched well at home, and he did again tonight. He got some velocity early on, Andrew. 6 innings, 9 strikeouts. That's very encouraging.
He's been excellent. David Bednar kind of got to figure it out here. He's already blown a couple saves. We know that he had some injury issues in spring, so it's important that he gets back on his A game. We saw Keller rebound. Just usually, Bob, the backup catcher would play in the afternoon game the next day. That's why I was scratching my head when I saw Bart in there, but hey, it worked. Keller pitched well, and he had another big hit to help propel the Pirates to a win.
Yeah, 9-2, as we said, first time since 1992. Let's go to our number one Cochrane Go One Better caller of the night, and it would be Jim in Blawnox. Jim, what's going on?
Hey, gentlemen. So I think for tomorrow for the Penguins, and correct me if I'm wrong, you actually want the Capitals to win because
yes,
Detroit has more regulation wins, 2 more than the Penguins, and I'm not sure, is it head-to-head or regulation wins?
No, regulation wins is the
it's
first.
regulation wins. They have 2 more regulation overtime wins. It's confusing. The NHL is the most confusing standings, but the Penguins have more regulation wins,
right,
which is the tiebreaker.
And so they would have it. But nonetheless, I think Detroit, has some top-end talent on their side. We saw it last night against Buffalo, and guys like Dylan, Larkin. They have a new kid, Lucas Raymond, who's been really good, and some others. But they struggled in goal at times. David Perron's a good contributor for them, but. Bottom line, and Patrick Kane, I can't say enough about him. So he's, they're due to get back in the playoffs, Andrew. Remember when they were the juggernaut? They were the team that was just, don't want to play the Red Wings. And all of a sudden, things changed. Zetterberg leaves, Datsuk leaves, and all of a sudden they were, how many years in a row has it been? They had 25 years in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden, nothing.
Yeah. Changed conferences from the West to the East and really have not been a factor ever since that move. Bob, I would say this. Tell me if you agree. I think if you win 3 of these 4 games, and if they're regulation wins over the Islanders and a regulation win over Detroit, I think you might actually be able to afford a loss to Boston or Nashville. Yes. You can't lose both. But I think if you win 3 or 4 with regulation wins over New York and Detroit, I think they'll get in that scenario.
We haven't talked about the Flyers. They've been awful, but they still are right there. If they get hot and win games down the road here,
I don't see it with them.
The one thing I like about the Penguins' chances against the Islanders, in addition to that finale in New York, Penguins and Islanders, the Islanders have 2 games against the Rangers. And the Rangers are a very good team, as we know. So, and that's a rivalry game.
And they got to play at New Jersey, and that's a rivalry, too. The Devils won't take that night off, Bob.
Yeah, so we'll see. I mean, none of these schedules is particularly easy. I mean, Nashville's a good team, and the Penguins have to deal with them, too. Let's go out to Frank in Moon Township, who joins us right now on the hotline. What's up, Frank?
Hey, Bob. I haven't talked to you in a while. Hey, Pony. How are you?
What's up, man?
Hey.
Two things. Sidney skates. He doesn't use, like, the normal skates that...
Frank? What happened there, Frank? Something about the skates?
He uses the old school skates, Bob.
Yeah, but that's still, I've never seen a situation where in-game a skate issue prevents your best player from playing in the most critical part of the game, which is overtime, and the one area that they've really struggled. So that's weird to me. I actually thought he got shaken up.
Bob, you know what I think? Yeah, he did. You know what I think deserves second guessing? We haven't brought it up yet. The first goal, you've got your 4th line on the ice. It's an older line with Jeff Carter. You ice the puck there. So they've got to stay on the ice.
Right.
My opinion, Mike Sullivan should call a timeout there and give those guys a chance to catch their breath and get their bearings. Instead, Carter loses the faceoff, then loses track of his guy, and he scores the goal that ties the game. I think most coaches in that situation would have called timeout, used it there, and given those guys a chance to kind of get their bearings.
I understand the rationale, but there's so many of those plays in the course of a game. You want to save that time to, I think, when you really need it, and that was still at a point of the game where I don't think it was necessary to do. Because, again,
what else are you going to need it for, Bob?
Well, icing calls happen quite a bit, and there are a lot of guys who are tired have to stay on the ice. You only have one of them to call. What are you going to do? If you use it there, then you won't have it later in the game.
Well, they leave games with timeouts in their back pocket all the time. It's not like football.
I understand that, but in one like this, I would have waited for a more significant moment than an icing call. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of them in the game. If this was late in the game and that happened, I would have definitely done it.
But they had been out there for a long time, too. That was a long shift before that icing call happened. That's just my opinion on it.
All right, I want to get your take on John Calipari. Now, he is heading to Razorback country, Fayetteville, Arkansas, which is surprising, but then again, not so surprising. We saw the fan reaction here at PPG Paints Arena when Kentucky lost to Oakland. And when that happened, it was another year, a missed opportunity. They're 1-4 in their last 5 NCAA tournament games, Andrew. He was feeling the pressure, maybe not the support he wanted, so he goes out and strikes this deal. And the interesting thing is, he's going to get talent. whether or not he can take that talent, the difference is now with transfers, you're going to have teams like Oakland, which feature 26-year-old kids versus freshmen. And I don't know sometimes if that's always the best. You may have the most talented guys. I can guarantee you that roster of Kentucky players are going to have players in the NBA. None of the Oakland guys will be in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be obviously love at first sight because Calipari's such a salesman, and he's going to talk about how he'll bring back the glory days of Corliss Williamson and winning the national championship there with Bill Clinton in the crowd. But I don't think he's going to be better than the guy they had before, Bob. Eric Musselman really was the guy that was the pioneer of the transfer portal and was the first guy to really build this whole team that way. And they've gone to Sweet 16s and Elite 8s with him. Calipari's had very little tournament success. But as far as replacing a guy, you know you're going to pack your arena and generate huge buzz with him as your coach. So I will wish him well there. And, Bob, shame on the reporter down in Kentucky. Let the man walk his dogs. He's got an elderly dog that was in a stroller. All right, let's not harass the guy and ambush him. Do you agree with me on that? If KDK said, go bother Mike Tomlin while he's walking his dogs and ask him about his job status, you'd say you're not doing that. That was completely unprofessional. That was uncalled for. Richie wouldn't do that. That was a terrible job by that TV station in Kentucky. Like that. Let the man walk his dogs.
Even before cell phones, sometimes we were in that situation, and I just never wanted to do it, never would do it. I don't think it's professional to knock on somebody's door to try to get an answer, and he doesn't know we're coming. I just don't think that's the way you do business. But let's talk about who goes to Kentucky. There are a lot of names out there. Somebody keeps talking to me about Danny Hurley. You know, first of all, if you're going to use the argument if they win tonight, and they were winning, I assume they're going to win tonight against Purdue, although Purdue played pretty well early in that game. You have 2 championships. You can say, what more is there to do? And that's a blue blood program where you can get everything you need right there, you would think. Or does he stay there and just continue what is now a basketball factory? It always really has been, has the reputation.
Yeah, I think there's one looming question here, and that is Connecticut committed to staying where they are in football to remain in the Big East? Because if they were to move to, say, the Big 12 or another conference, we've already seen what Connecticut looks like when they're stuck in a bad league. They were in that American conference, and they were mediocre. So if Hurley's convinced that they're going to stay where they are, he shouldn't leave. He should get a big raise and ride it out there. If he's not convinced of that, then he should be very interested in the Kentucky job because of everything you said. It is one of the 3 best jobs in America, and I don't think it's 3rd. I think it's probably better than that. So, yeah, when they come calling, you at least listen to Kentucky, even with their fanatical fans and media who don't leave guys alone when they're walking their dogs.
Nate Oates, by the way, said, no, he's staying. That means he got money. Jamie Dixon got a raise last week and a new deal, so he's not going to be pounding on this door, even though he would be an interesting candidate. It's going to be fun to see both Louisville and Kentucky, both without coaches at the same time. We're due for a break. We'll take it right now. On KDK Plus and 93.7 The Fan, this is the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. Ken Rice is standing by with a preview of tonight's 11 o'clock news on KDKA. Ken?
Hey, Bob. Tonight we're covering all the angles of the total solar eclipse. Wait, what did I say? Total solar eclipse, or as I call it, the unshining moment. Plus, new details on construction coming to the Strip and tips for tax time as the deadline approaches. All coming up at 11, Bob. See you in a few minutes.
All right. I get what you're saying about the total. That's a tough word on that eclipse.
It's really not, though.
No, it was 97%. Is that what it was today? I don't know.
97% in Pittsburgh.
That's a pretty good percentage.
Not nothing. It was still cool.
All right, Ken. Thanks very much. We'll see you then. I got a couple of tweets here. Will Knight says, is it me or have the Pirates been just fun to watch the past couple of weeks? Yes, when you're 9-2, it's a lot better. Anthony S. says 4-on-4 hockey is hurting them. Again, having trouble getting the puck out of their own zone. Well, listen, I do think this, Andrew, about the Penguins. If they get to be 5-on-5, they're one of the better teams in the NHL. You look at their plus-minus when it comes to points versus some of these other teams, there's no comparison. So if their other stuff would just come to life, they could be very dangerous.
They've outplayed Toronto, Tampa, the Rangers, all 5-on-5, which bodes well if they can get into the playoffs.
All right, Pony, we're out of time. Appreciate it as always. We'll do it again tomorrow night.
See you, Bob.
Okay, Andrew Filipponi up at 93.7 The Fan. I'm Bob Pompeani. Thanks so much for joining us. Tomorrow, we'll talk about Detroit and Washington, the Flyers in action. All that tomorrow on the Sports Call. Have a good night. We'll see you at 11 on KDK.